Mr. Pro Tem. I'd like to actually take this opportunity to highlight an important fact. I don't know if it was highlighted earlier today. I arrived a little late, but in this case specifically, Catherine Sandoval is actually the first Latina commissioner in the 100-year history of the California Public Utilities Commission. And I do want to recognize Governor Jerry Brown for his commitment to diversity. He did so, obviously, with the appointment in his first term as governor with Mario Obledo, and this is historic in nature. So I want to also recognize and congratulate the governor. I'd also like Mr. Pro Tem to sort of take a moment to boast, if you will, because Catherine Sandoval was born and raised in the 22nd Senatorial District, and obviously in Boyle Heights.
Right.
So there's a lot of young folks there who are very proud of you. You know,
a lot of pride.
A lot of pride. So you're an inspiration and a role model for a lot of young boys, and especially a lot of young girls. I know your sister from Hope is here today. You have Sisters from Hope, and I just want to say that you inspire a lot of folks, a lot of young folks, not just Latinas, but African Americans, Asian Americans, white Americans, everybody. You know, that makes California such a special and unique place. So again, congratulations, and obviously your academic record is impeccable. You know. Rhodes Scholarship, Yale University, Stanford Law School. Mike Florio, you're no slouch either.
Only at home.
You know, you're at the Princeton University master's degree at Woodrow Wilson, Public International School of Affairs. Obviously, your JD at New York University. I don't know where Bowling Green University is at.
Rural Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio. Okay, I don't know where it's at, but it's. But you're no slouch either, and you are obviously a role model for many folks too, especially obviously your 17-year-old son and your daughter. Couple questions, open-ended for both of you. I think Senator Jean Fuller broached one of the subject matters that's important to me. I tend to see the PUC, and not so much the commissioners, but the structure, the way it's set up, is very San Francisco-centric. And I love San Francisco. I'm not from Northern California, but I lived in Northern California, and I lived in San Francisco specifically. But I do think it's very important that the PUC that represents the state of California get out more often. I want to hear from you your views specifically, again, with regards to the Central Valley, with regards to the Inland Valley Empire, and specifically with regards to Los Angeles and Southern California and San Diego. Today, the governor gave his state-of-state address here in the Capitol. Today, probably as we speak right now, he's giving a similar address in downtown Los Angeles City Hall. So he's sort of broken that mold. I think the PUC needs to do that, and it needs to show commitment on an annual basis. Give me your views on that, please.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for your kind words, Senator. And I agree also that one of the things that I've said about the CPUC is that I do think that the institution is San Francisco-centric. It's also part of the reason why we decided to station my chief of staff, Dita Skatagi, here in Sacramento, because also having had the opportunity to work in Sacramento at the Business Transportation and Housing Agency, I'm familiar with all of the agencies in Sacramento and, of course, most importantly, the legislature here. But I've also made it a point, as says Commissioner Florio, with his listening tour, I've traveled from north of Redding down to San Diego, to Los Angeles, to Fresno, Stockton, and many places in between. Soon I hope to be going to a water hearing in Calipatria in the Imperial Valley, as well as in Orange County. So I've really tried to get out there to understand the tremendous geographic, ethnic, linguistic, economic diversity of the 33 million people in the state of California.
Yes, and I agree, and I think getting the formal commission meetings out of San Francisco is something of a logistical and economic challenge, but we are doing it more, and we also are having more public participation hearings around the state where we have an administrative law judge and usually a couple of staff people and often a commissioner, just to hear from the public about rate increases or other issues that are happening in particular communities. And I think the only limitation on our willingness to do that is budget, and that's hopefully a little better this year than it was last. And I think everybody really values that opportunity because it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all state.
Yeah, and I would very much like to see a real effort on behalf of the commissioners. I appreciate the individual effort.
Yeah.
That is just that, individual efforts to go up and down the state, but something that's institutional with regards to letting advocates, those who are affected, ratepayers have an opportunity to engage the PUC. It's very limited to those who can actually participate because of the centricness of the geographical location. It's just that challenging. I have 2 more questions, Mr. Pro Tem.
Of course.
One is on prevailing wages. I know that the PG&E recently made a commitment with regards to prevailing wages and gas pipelines. My question is a little more general. In your view, give me your perspective with regards to prevailing wages inserted to gas pipeline rules as they are promulgated by you, the Commission.
I don't believe the rules address that currently, and certainly something we can take a look at in our ongoing rulemaking. It's my belief that most of the work, if not all, is done by people who are getting prevailing wage. But if that's not the case, we need to take a hard look at that because, you get what you pay for in many things. And when you're dealing with infrastructure that has the potential to kill and maim, it's particularly important that we have highly skilled and well-trained employees who are fairly compensated for the work that they do.
And I would like to echo those sentiments. We rely on the skill of our workers, of our highly trained workers. My sister Barbara's boyfriend is a longtime lineman and has faced a lot of dangers in his work. And we really owe a debt of gratitude to the 2 off-duty union workers who turned off the gas that was feeding that fire in San Bruno on their own initiative because they knew the system well. And they also had, the chutzpah, the ganas to say, we're going to turn off the gas. We're not waiting for orders to do it. And so making sure that people are well trained and well paid is critical. Making sure that these are also included is something that can also level the playing field with regard to competition. And I would also just like to suggest that we consider looking at that as far as contractors, because I have heard from some of the small businesses that it sometimes is a problem where some contractors are using prevailing wage and others are not. And even for things like tree trimming, tree trimming sounds, easy and normal, but when you're tree trimming near power lines, this is a critically important and dangerous task.
All right, thank you. One last question with regards to energy efficiency. I know that we both had conversations when we met with regards to energy efficiency. I know your views specifically with regards to energy efficiency. Again, open-ended question to you, Mr. Florio and Ms. Sandoval. What can you do to insist that the IOUs achieve greater private capital leverage? The vast majority, if you will, the bulk of the roughly $1 billion in energy efficiency programs is run through rebates. And I'm of the belief that we have billions of dollars on the side of private equity dollars ready to be invested in energy efficiency. We're not leveraging, enough in California. We should be getting, at least in my estimation, $10 for every dollar invested by the ratepayer. I think we're getting one-on-one. I don't believe we're achieving maximum, efficiency, if you will, no pun intended, with regards to energy efficiency programs. So I got a real issue with that. Obviously, the issue with regards to commercial property energy efficiency retrofits and what we can do to create jobs, as well as reducing our carbon footprint and greenhouse gases, because these buildings, in effect, are stationary emitters of greenhouse gases, maybe akin to somewhat, although psychologically not. We don't view it and perceive it as a cement factory or as energy power plant, but they emit greenhouse gases just as much sometimes, So let me ask you these questions specifically. How can you help me make sure that we achieve that IOUs leverage private capital dollars to maximize the benefits that energy efficiency provides in the state of California, in the role as commissioners with the PUC?
We are in the midst of reviewing the programs that will go forward in 2013 and 2014. Our colleague, Commissioner Farron, is leading that activity, and as you probably know, he comes from a financial background, and he has indicated he will be making it a focus of that proceeding to try to bring in the private capital resources that he's used to working with. We may be reaching, a saturation point with the rebate-type programs, and to get the deeper energy efficiency retrofits is both more costly and far greater efficiency gains. And, people are not going to be able to do that with cash out of pocket. So, I don't know exactly what the mechanisms will be, but it's certainly something that I will be working with Commissioner Farron over the coming year to find ways to do exactly what you suggest, is bring, it may involve, ratepayers as a backstop for bad loans or something like that, but a way to get money that's looking for a reasonable investment into this area, because the utilities can't do it all on their own. They're spending their capital on transmission lines and pipeline safety, so we need to leverage that private capital, and I'm happy to have a colleague who's pretty knowledgeable about how to make that happen.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. I think you raised a number of issues that are very important, as you mentioned, with businesses and small businesses. This is a really important issue. How do we create effective energy efficiency that's also accessible and financially accessible? Also today, the majority of Californians live in apartments. The majority of Californians are renters. And one of the things that has deeply troubled me is that a great deal of our programs are targeted at homeowners, not renters. Now, as a homeowner, I could benefit from that. But one of the problems is some of our programs, I think, are not well targeted. Again, the Whole House program, the average starting copay for the participants in the Whole House program is $8,500. So people are paying, on average, and most of them are not financing it, they're paying cash out of pocket, $8,500 to $15,000 in order to get $1,000 of support from the state and support from the federal government. But again, it's reaching dual income, no children households on the coast, and not necessarily the people who need that most. And so I think we need to look at what are the barriers again. Are there financial barriers? Are there barriers in program structure? Are there other barriers so that we can do the appropriate leveraging and also take easy steps? Look at things like painting roofs white that can also help to reduce the heat gain.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to working with both of you as well as Commissioner Mark Farron on this issue.
Great, thank you.
Well, the fun isn't over because I haven't asked my question.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Wait, there's more. And I do want to explore three different areas, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. I'm very clear on the answer to your answer to my first question, and also on your public record over the last year, where you both stand on the relative balance and the regulation question between consumers and industry around telecommunications. I am less clear on where you stand when the competing priorities are stated differently. Namely, the need in California for clean, renewable energy and the additional cost to the consumer from procuring that energy. And just today, of course, the governor in the State of the State called for a goal of 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy by 2020. Ambitious, right on, but it begs some questions. And so in November of 2011, the Commission approved a power purchase agreement between PG&E, and this is PG&E in another context here, not the San Bruno issue that we have been speaking about, and Abengoa SA for a proposed solar thermal plant in the Mojave Desert. And the argument against the plant was that the cost would be too high for consumers. And this is one of the rare instances where, on the record, these two commissioners who I think philosophically generally agree on things, as you said, parted. Commissioner Florio, you opposed the project. Commissioner Sandoval, you approved the project, and it was a 4-to-1 vote in favor of approval. I don't want to necessarily relitigate that case because that's not our role here, but but it does beg a question about your respective views. Do you accept the fact that meeting the 33% standard and even going higher at some point is going to cost consumers more money than if we didn't do that? And if so, how do you assess as adjudicators / policymakers the appropriate balance between that important environmental and economic goal and that additional cost to the consumers?
Well, I think there is an additional cost. I think the good news is the renewable premium, if you will, is shrinking pretty dramatically. I, in my prior career, was involved in monitoring a lot of the utility procurement of initial renewable energy contracts back in 2003, 2004, 2007. And back then, the utilities were really beating the bushes trying to find good renewable projects, and they were pretty darned expensive. That situation has changed dramatically in the last few years, and the solicitations that were held this summer and fall resulted in record numbers of bids and record low prices for bids, and not by fly-by-night operators, but by reputable, experienced developers. I mean, to the point where, we've heard people talk about grid parity, meaning fossil fuel and renewable are equal in price. I thought it was a far-off dream. We're pretty darn close to it. I mean, the changes that have occurred in these industries, in large part as a result of our early investments, are really paying off. So,
okay, but if I might be a little provocative here, I'm not sure that Commissioner Sandoval necessarily believes the same thing, because if she did believe the same thing, then she would have obviously said no to the power purchase agreement in question here, because I assume you don't want to pay any more, have the ratepayers pay any more for renewable energy than they absolutely have to, yet you thought it was a necessary price to pay for the renewable energy. So take on your colleague here, please.
I want to agree with you that we are of the same ilk, although in this case I think our analytical process led us to a different result. First of all, I think that we are both guided by concern for ratepayers, for consumers, and for consumer protection. And, if I may diverge into a personal story, I wear this pin today that was my mother's, and that she bought at a thrift store in East LA, at the Desert Industries thrift store, which is still there, at a time when we bought most of our clothes from the thrift store. And I wear it in memory of my mother, but also as a reminder of the people who buy their clothes at the thrift store because they have to, and think about how rates affect them. So I do put on that lens. And I also ask for those people and for others. I have relatives in Kern County, and I know how hot it is, and relatives in Sylmar. What is going to also benefit them as we look towards achieving the 33% renewable goal? As this body is also recognized, one of the problems is that sometimes activities, such as the generation of electricity, doesn't always fully, in the parlance, internalize its externalities. It causes other problems. So you pay for it one way or the other. You pay for it in your health bill or you pay for it in your energy bill. But part of what I looked at in detail with that particular contract and with every contract is also the viability score. Is it a viable contract? How far have they come in terms of agreements and the other steps that they need to get there? And in this particular case, it had a very interesting, important, what we call project profile that can help to address peak. Because it was this technology called solar thermal, it's supposed to hold its heat mass after the sun goes down, and so can contribute more to peak, that 6 o'clock time. And one of the things that I've learned is from the utilities is that peak is getting spikier and higher as more of us go home and plug in our cell phones and other devices. And so the ability to contribute more, especially at that critical time right after the sun goes down, I felt also contributed to its value. And so I think these things are all important. And just last, I would like to say that one of the things that I have advocated for is reform in our procurement process. It took more than 5 years for that particular project to come from its initial negotiation with the utilities to being presented to the CPUC. That is far too long. And I think we need a stable, transparent, predictable, and expeditious process. And I was aghast when I joined the commission in January and found out that the commission had never held the request for offer process, the bid process for renewables, in 2010, and at the same time had created a rule that prohibited contracts with renewable developers for small projects under 20 megawatts. What they had done is created no way to get a contract. A business can't live. We can't achieve our goals with no way to get a contract. And look at what it produced. It produced the lowest prices ever once we created a path to contract.
So again, this is not the place to relitigate that, but it does raise an issue that I think you need to be mindful of. I know for myself, and I think speaking for a lot of my colleagues, I was very frustrated last week when the legislative analyst in the Department of Finance, when it came to our state budget, had revenue estimates that were $5 billion apart. And I look at this one particular case, and two very smart people with similar philosophies, one saying that $1.25 billion over market price is okay, and the other saying it's not okay. We need to make sure that regardless of what your decision is in a given case, that the foundation and the scope that you're looking through and the mode of analysis is similar and is understood by the public and is understood. That's what people want more than anything. If we're going to make budget decisions, and we're going to make budget decisions, whether they be a cut, whether they be on the cut or the tax side, it has to be with information and context that is at least approximately reconciled. And this is not a perfect analogy, but to me it rings true. 1.25 billion. I don't know what the right answer is here. It may be necessary, it may not be. Yeah. But we need to know that this commission is looking at it through the same scope of analysis. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
I think one of the challenges is, there are a lot of things we can quantify. There are things that are much harder to quantify. renewable integration costs are something that we hear a lot about, but nobody has. What is the cost of fitting these intermittent resources into the system? It's very hard to get a handle on that because we're going somewhere where we've never been before. And when things are unquantified, well-meaning people can reach different conclusions about is it bigger than a bread box.
I get it, but you have the advantage of being somewhat out of the political day-to-day. When we debate renewable energy on the floor of our Senate, the debate is often very good and sophisticated, but sometimes it's, you want to do something that's going to cost people a lot more. And on the other side, it's, you want to, you're not doing enough to help clean up the air and improve the climate. You have the opportunity outside of the political day-to-day to be analytical. And you obviously are both analytical. But here's one instance where your method of analysis, as you described it, had to be so vastly different that it does beg the question here, how should we look for guidance too, how should we balance the cost issue versus the need to be aggressive in procuring renewable energy? I won't belabor it. I'm going to, if that's okay, move on, and maybe we can come back to it in the closing, if that's okay. I want to ask about an area that troubles me, and that's the PUC's long-time view of its responsibility to release public records. And this has come out, of course, in the San Bruno explosion investigations, where the CPUC General Counsel, Frank Lin, quoting the San Francisco Chronicle from November of 2011, essentially said that everything is secret at the PUC unless it is declared otherwise. We know that the San Mateo County District Attorney and his office encountered what they describe as foot-dragging by the CPUC when his office sought tens of thousands of documents to help the prosecutor's criminal investigation of CPUC. And the law, strange, is that the PUC is required to post accident investigation reports only if the commission seeks punitive action against a company. So here, we all buy the cliche that an ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure, and one way to prevent is to expose in the daylight safety records and what has been done or not done to address safety problems. And here CPUC puts the burden on the newspaper or the legislature or the citizen to be able to access these basic records. Is that a good law? And if you don't think it's a good law, what do you suggest we do to change it?
I think I don't know the context of General Counsel Lin's conversation with the reporter. I think he overstated the case a little bit in that quote. Section 583 of the Public Utilities Code does say that information that the utility submits under claim of confidentiality is to be treated that way until otherwise determined. And the reason for that, and maybe it's not a good enough reason anymore, the reason is the commission gets enormous amounts of information from these private companies, and we often need it quickly. So the concept, I think, and I wasn't around when that law was passed, but the thought was, give us what we need and we'll sort out whether it's confidential or not later. That was, I think, the intention was to facilitate the movement of these mountains of information between the PUC and the utilities that we regulate. Where I think we have fallen down in the past is we have put enormous amounts of information on our website about the safety issues. But what we have not done, and I think we'll be looking at, we have already have a team at work trying to figure out how to reformulate this, is establish categories of information that will automatically be made public, and only where there is a real question about does this need to be confidential, would we have an individual determination. In other words, kind of flipping that presumption for the vast majority of information.
Do you need a statutory change to do that, or can you do it administratively?
I believe we have a team working on it right now. I think there's a lot more that we could do, and if not, I think Senator Yee's ready to move on this.
Well, let's let our team, Senator Yee's team, with your team, to remedy this as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I would agree that there is an overclassification of materials as confidential. Part of that is statutory, and so that's an issue that I think we can address together. But I've seen even cases where the overclassification, in my view, of confidential materials has even hurt the utilities who are trying to make their own case that something such as insurance premiums are just unreasonable because they designated the exhibits as confidential. And to me, something like how many brokers did you contact? How wide was your search to try to get this insurance? Is the stuff of how you demonstrate due diligence. I didn't understand why this was confidential. So I think that it is an issue, and that disclosure is one of the fundamental ways that we create light, we create understanding, and that it's particularly important for first responders to also have access to relevant data.
You can't do it alone, really. And public disclosure helps you do your job. There's always the ability to redact information, confidential information, to maintain that kind of discretion, but that's different from the policy that the CPUC employs. Last category, this isn't a question, more of a comment. I'd be remiss, and my colleagues would be surprised if I didn't use this opportunity to urge you to look at the vast resources that the CPUC employs for research and development to lead this state in funding and staffing and working career-based high schools around renewable energy and anything dealing with the PUC's jurisdiction. You could have a tremendous impact if you looked at part of your responsibility as investing in the creation of high schools which maintain rigorous curriculum but establish career pathways for young people who are interested in going into any one of the utility-related fields that you have jurisdiction over. Because qualified, trained workforce, helping end the dropout rate, being part of connecting education and the economy which you have a significant role over, is outside the box, as they say. But I would ask you to consider devoting some real time to working with those of us who are interested in this area and making it part of the PUC's work and your legacies.
I'd love to.
Yes.
That's a yes. All right. Sign on the dotted line. Let's hear from the public. Yes, Senator Alquist had two more questions. I apologize.
I have two more
Go ahead.
questions.
Yes.
It won't take long.
Senator Fuller, of course.
Thank you. Before I ask the two questions, I'd just like to say, as one with an undergraduate degree in mathematics, that if you have sophisticated and complete data on which to base analysis, you are more likely to reach an endpoint that is similar to each other than apart. The two questions, one is on the replacement plan. PG&E has proposed a $2.2 billion pipeline renovation plan, with ratepayers paying 90% of that plan. I believe that much of those funds would not even be needed if PG&E had done what they were supposed to do with the pipelines many years ago. So my first question to you is, what do you think of this plan with the 90% being repaid out of repairs tax pocket? And second, what guiding philosophy kinds of tools will you use to determine what is fair? That's the first question.
You're in charge of the gas.
Yes, it is a pending proceeding that we're working on right now. I think you stated it very well. If money was not properly spent in the past, or if they were given money for something and didn't do it, ratepayers don't pay twice for that. I think the challenging part will be sorting out, which activities fall into that bucket and which are truly the result of new requirements that they have never been funded to do in the past. And that's what I see as the heart of the proceeding that we're now ongoing, is to differentiate what is PG&E's responsibility and what portion of it is our responsibility, because we're moving the goalposts on them. And I plan to spend most of the next year digging into this in detail.
So at this point, you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
Response?
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to have made up my mind yet, because the evidence isn't in.
Ms. Sandoval?
Well, thank you. And on this question, I would just note, we are both not at liberty to put a stake in the ground because of the pending proceeding, but I would note that the Consumer Protection and Safety Division report makes several recommendations for what should be done. And among the recommendations is that PG&E should use the $429.8 million in revenue collected since 1999 that is above and beyond what is required to earn its authorized rate of return to fund future gas transmission and storage operation, because it seeks additional ratepayers' funds going forward. So we will weigh very seriously this and many other recommendations with relevant facts in the law to determine what should be paid and what has already been paid. And again, I would like to stress that I think it's important that we also take the steps to ensure that we don't get so out of whack with allegations of underspending on the system and potentially over-earning in a way that results in higher rates.
Right. And you always have to be careful to take into consideration PG&E's underspending over many years, which led to great lack of security and safety for human life, which segues nicely into my very last question. And that is, PG&E pipeline maps were previously shared with local responders, but this practice was abandoned after September 11th, 2011. Fire chief report says that the explosions, first said that the explosions were of a plane crash, so they weren't even really sure what was going on. From what I heard, the hydrants didn't even have water in them. They were not able to really put some of the fires out. Your Consumer Protection and Safety Division report found that PG&E had inadequate procedures to handle emergencies. So the question is, what is the Commission going to do to ensure that my constituents are safe and that there is an emergency preparedness plan coordinated between the utilities and local first responders, with local elected officials understanding what is going on in event of another disaster?
There has been a lot of work done on this. The maps are being made available to first responders, and we had a workshop a couple of months ago where we brought in people from the first responder community to meet with the utilities and talk about what form the information would be most useful to the first responders. They want the right information, but don't overwhelm me with information. So we've begun a very good dialogue on that front. I think individuals can go on the website and see what's in their neighborhood. We don't put the whole system up for the world to see because of terrorism concerns, but first responders definitely need that information. We will be continuing to keep the pressure on the utilities to get out and meet with first responders at places that are convenient to them. We get differing reports about different utilities in different locations, how responsive they are. We would like to have a universally high standard of responsiveness. We learned, for example, in this workshop that the Fire Chiefs Association has their own website, and they have the equivalent of a chat room. And we can, through working with the chiefs, get these topics in a place where the fire chiefs will be looking at it and talking about it. And that was one of the things we would never have known if we hadn't brought these folks in to meet with us and with the utilities.
Great. Well, thank you. And on that, one of the things I want to mention is you mentioned that there were allegations that the hydrants didn't have enough water in them. So I will follow up with my water advisor on that question. I'm also been asked to be designated as CPUC's water commissioner, and hydrants are supposed to have adequate water. So I promise that I will follow up with you on that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I agree that the emergency response is critical. And of course, in San Bruno, the emergency response here was not only pitiful but dangerous, and there were so many things that could have been done better. I worked for the state at the Business Transportation and Housing Agency on that horrible day, September 11th, 2001, when of course the planes hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and one of the things that we started doing as a state was looking at the safety of our infrastructure. One of the things that PG&E did as a result of that was not only to take away some of the maps that had been shared with first responders, but, for example, the tools to turn off the gas were removed from the site where you actually turn off the gas. And unlike other utilities, Southern California Gas actually has workers who have the tools with them 24 hours a day, and designated people are available 24 hours a day with the tools so that in an emergency they could turn off the gas. In this case, 2 off-duty union workers had to go to the Colma yard to pick up the tools and then go to 2 different places to turn off the gas. And my last thing I would say is that relying on remote control shut-off valves is an important step, and I thank the legislature for their support of that. But we also need to make sure that the person in the gas operations center who has their finger on the button, a remote shut-off valve is not automatic. It relies on a human being to make decisions, to put their finger on the button to turn off the gas or turn down the valves, that person is adequately trained. And right now we have a system of basically self-regulation and self-licensing.
And that there's a backup person also.
Right. And so I want to make sure that those people are adequately trained so that they will be able to make the right decision and be supported as well by the people in the field, including first responders and the workers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Fuller had a brief question, then we're going to get to public testimony.
One last thing I'd like to follow up on. California has a tremendous untapped renewable resource located in the Central Valley in the form of biogas from dairies, wastewater treatment plants, landfills, and food processing. Can you just tell me shortly if the CPUC is doing anything to help incubate and develop this energy resource?
I believe our recent decision on the SGIP, the Small Self-Generation Incentive Program, provides for biogas to be eligible for subsidies under that program. We're in the midst of developing what's called a feed-in tariff for small renewable generators that may also provide an avenue. The governor's office has a bioenergy task force that is working on these issues across many state departments that we as the PUC are participating in, along with Food and Agriculture, Energy Commission, Air Resources Board, long list. And I think we will see very substantial progress in the year to come. There may need to be some legislative change, and if so, that will be put before you by the administration. But this has been a high priority item in the governor's office and at the commission to try to capture. It's a double benefit because methane released to the atmosphere is a very potent greenhouse gas, and if we can turn that into fuel, we're benefiting ourselves two ways. So there will be a lot done.
So quickly on biogas, so we addressed that issue in great detail in looking at the self-generation incentive program, which does allow for, especially those who are able to get biogas from dairies and the like, to be able to participate in that program. I wanted to echo what Commissioner Florio was saying, that the legislative issue of the Hayden Amendment, which basically creates a barrier in the state of California to landfill gas being injected into the pipeline because of the standards that it sets for vinyl chloride. And I understand that there is some interest in revisiting this. When my family moved from East LA to Montebello, I think little did my parents realize when they bought the house that it was at the base of a hill, and at the top of the hill was a dump, which later became a Superfund site. So I have lived near the sweet smell of methane. But I think that it has been many decades since the Hayden Amendment was passed, and so I think that this is a good opportunity for scientific investigation to determine if vinyl chloride is still a problem with landfills, and therefore does the barrier to participation of California industries in this area, does it continue to make sense, and is it based on good science?
Answer your question? Yes. Okay, thank you. Let's hear from members of the public. I know you've all waited patiently, and we do appreciate it. We use this mic where Mr. Loper is standing.
Mr. President, members, Sprint Communications, Dennis Loper. We urge your recommendation of confirmation for Ms. Sandoval. We found since her appointment that her commitment to ensuring a competitive wireless market is important, and we appreciate her hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loper. Mr. Wetch.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the California Coalition of Utility Employees, the State Association of Electrical Workers, and the California State Pipe Trades Council, in strong support, particularly on the utility worker side. We have a 25-year relationship of working closely with Commissioner Florio and many different issues. Haven't always agreed, but we've worked on many big policy issues together and respect his commitment. And we have been working closely for the last year with Commissioner Sandoval, and she's had a very open-door policy. But at the end of the day, the Coalition of Utility Employees strongly urges the confirmation of these two commissioners, because at the end, they both recognize that the Commission's number one responsibility is to maintain reliability of the electrical system, and they understand that our current transmission and distribution system is completely antiquated and in need of considerable investment. So we'd urge your approval. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Carl Zakella on behalf of the Natural Resources Defense Council. We're very pleased to strongly support the nominations of these two extraordinarily qualified individuals. I think that your hearing today, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, really illuminates the quality of these individuals, Governor Brown's appointment of them, and on behalf of our 1.2 million members and supporters, 250,000 of whom are here in California, we strongly endorse the nominations of these two commissioners.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Aubrey Stone, President and CEO of California Black Chamber, and I have the honor of seeing my friends again. And after having private meetings with them, sometimes disagreeing, but always honor and integrity, was steadfast in all the meetings, and I want to say that to their face publicly. I strongly endorse their confirmation. They're going to do great things for the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Lenny Goldberg, Mark Toney is here for a turn, so I'll speak for the Utility Consumer Action Network. We're in strong support, and I just want to say that during the something that's not appreciated during the electricity crisis, before and after, Mike Florio spent 7 mind-numbing years on the Independent System Operator Board, where he really learned incredible detail about the operation of the system, so we're very lucky to have him. And his ideas became the formative ideas that got us through the electricity crisis of 2001. So I think we really owe a lot to him, and we're in full support. Ms. Sandoval's telecommunications background is so welcome to consumers. So
thank you very much, Mr. Goldberg.
Good afternoon, President Pro Tem Steinberg and distinguished members of the Senate Rules Committee. My name is Helen Torres. I'm the Executive Director of HOPE, Hispanas, Organized for Political Equality. I'm here joined by 2 board members, and as I was getting texts from various Latinas from across the state watching on the Cal State channel. We're here in full support of
Are you saying we're on national television?
I said across the state.
Oh, the state.
But we have hopes for you yet. HOPE is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization committed to ensuring political and economic parity for Latinas. We're here in full support of Mrs. Sandoval for a variety of reasons. One including, of course, that she is well qualified, and her professional experiences highlights her leadership roles in government and a passion for working with underrepresented communities. I'm also proud to say that because of her her experience and how she knows how to manage government, that she will be open-minded regarding the concerns of groups who often are represented by interests of hardworking families.
Thank you.
I hope one last thing, because it is historical.
Go ahead.
It is our mission to ensure political and economic parity, and I think it's important to note that not only is Mrs. Sandoval's appointment, if confirmed by all of you, will be history, but across the state, local and statewide boards, commissions that deal with water and energy, we have less than 1% of Latinas represented. So we hope that you take a big giant forward and work and vote to support and confirm Ms. Sandoval. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience.
I'm Betty Jo Tocoli, and I'm president of the California Small Business Association, and I'm here on behalf of over 200,000 small business owners in the state to support the nomination of Commissioner Sandoval. We've had the opportunity to work with her on small business issues since the days of universal service, and so that we go back a few years, and she knows how to walk the talk, and she is open to listening and accountability. We've also had the opportunity to work with Commissioner Florio as his duties turn, and we ask for your support on both nominations. California will be lucky to get them both.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Richard with AARP California. We are really pleased to support both Commissioner Florio and Commissioner Sandoval on behalf of our 3.1 million members. We're looking forward to the work they do to protect ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sam Nzunza. I'm a managing director for Loop Capital Markets, and I'm here to provide our support for both commissioners. And one of the examples that I want to give, it's very, very short, but both commissioners have supported the implementation and the policies behind GO 156, which includes it deals with purchasing from disabled veterans, women, and minority-owned businesses. And an excellent example of those types of programs. We just did a bond deal in the last 30 days.
You've got to make it quick here.
15 seconds.
Go ahead.
We did a $500 million bond deal, and it was the lowest coupon rate in the history of taxable bonds. And this was led by a Meeby-Weeby firm. And we strongly support both commissioners. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Jack Hawks. I'm the Executive Director of the California Water Association. This is the group that comprises the water utilities regulated by the CPUC. We are clearly in strong support of their confirmation. For those of us who deal with the PUC almost on a daily basis, I can assure you they both gave new meaning to the phrase hit the ground running when they joined the commission. And from a water perspective, very important up here in Sacramento, these two commissioners have taken an aggressive and enthusiastic interest in water issues. We couldn't be more delighted that Commissioner Sandoval is the water commissioner. Commissioner Florio is very active in several water proceedings, and we urge their confirmation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ruben Gonzalez. I'm a senior vice president with the Morello Group, one of the largest Latino-owned privately held portfolio companies headquartered in California. 20 companies across 10 industries employing over 6,000 Californians. We wholeheartedly support the confirmation of Commissioner Sandoval. In the last year, we have gotten the chance to work with her very closely. And in addition to her obvious intellect and experience, we found that she brings a real humanity, which is hard to find often in regulatory bodies, making it more accessible and more successful. So we urge your support. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the committee, my name is Arthur Halbenstock. I'm Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for BrightSource Energy. We're a large-scale renewable power company. We're a solar power tower, a solar thermal company, and we're very excited to be building the Ivanpah project in California with 1,000 union workers who are building this project on time and on budget, and will be serving California very shortly.
And you're in favor of the commission?
We are very much... We are very much, even though neither of them had anything to do with it, we are very much in favor of both of the commissioners. It's been my great and good pleasure to work with Commissioner Florio for many years. Nobody knows the energy system better, and it's hard to imagine a public servant who would serve with greater honesty and integrity and forthrightness. Although I know that Commissioner Sandoval is equally well qualified. In addition to her tremendous expertise in telecommunications, her knowledge of the energy system was formed in the crucible of the energy crisis, and her short time in the commission, she's shown her great interest and tremendous skill in working through these issues, and we're very pleased to see both of them nominated and hope that you will confirm both of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Nancy Sarenda, founder of the Spanish Language Academy and also board member, Sacramento Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, enthusiastically supporting both candidates, and very delighted that Ms. Sandoval, whom I've known for a number of years, will be increasing awareness and focus on California's 40% population who speak languages other than English.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator and members of the committee. My name is Jose Perez, and I'm with the Latino Journal. Last week, we had a wonderful reception. Thank you for attending, Senator. And we have known Commissioner Sandoval and Commissioner Florio now for quite a healthy time to tell you that these two folks will be champions of inclusion, human inclusion, in the utility industry, which is really key because it offers so many jobs and so many business opportunities. And so we're very proud of the fact that they both have been nominated and that they're being considered by this committee. And on behalf of the Latino Journal and the Latin Business Association, we urge your confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez. Lynch, former commissioner.
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair and members of the Senate Rules Committee. My name is Loretta Lynch, and I'm the former president of the California PUC.
Excuse me, president.
Thank you. And I have known Commissioner Sandoval and Commissioner Florio for years, and I am here to support their nominations for Commissioner to the Public Utilities Commission. They are both exceptionally well qualified, but more than that, they will be here to help restore a focus on protecting the consumer and California businesses at this commission. And even more than that, they're both a breath of fresh air to what has recently been a very closed and non-transparent commission, and I am sure they both have the skill and the will to make the commission do it the people's business.
Very good. Thank you very much. Welcome back.
Thank you, members of the Senate Rules Committee. My name is Mark Toney, Executive Director of TURN, the Utility Reform Network. I'm here to support the confirmations both of Commissioners Florio and Sandoval. We really appreciate the leadership of Commissioner Sandoval in the proceeding to investigate the impact on California ratepayers of the AT&T merger proposal. With Commissioner Florio, working with him for 3 years at TURN, I appreciate from him that it's important not just to be right, but to be able to talk to other people and come up with solutions that present consensus solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tony.
Good afternoon, Senators, and particular greetings to my Senator, Elaine Alquist. My name is Teresa Alvarado. I serve on a number of boards, including HOPE and the Greenbelt Alliance, both of whom have submitted letters in support of Commissioner Sandoval's nomination. Over the past year, I've heard her speak on a number of occasions in both Northern and Southern California, and she continues to impress me at her accessibility, the due diligence she takes to understand these complex issues, and her willingness to really listen to people from all walks of life in all parts of the state. She really takes her responsibility to serve the people of California very seriously. We are very fortunate to have a person of her integrity and competence in her position, and I urge your confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members, Jesus Arredondo, Advantage Consulting, on behalf of the Western Power Trading Forum's nearly 70 member companies. Here in support of Commissioner Florio's appointment, we believe he'll be a tremendous asset to the Commission, and we urge your support of his confirmation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for testifying.
Members of the committee, my name is Alan Hammond. I'm here to support the confirmation of Catherine Sandoval and also Commissioner Florio. In particular, do I need to speak? Oh, I'll lean over. She's a stellar intellect. She cares about California. She does her work. She's very diligent. We think she's brilliant. We do, at Santa Clara University. And if there was any doubt about that, I'm sure it was made quite evident today, the range and the scope of her intellect. So we support her wholeheartedly.
Well said. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Sam Kang, General Counsel for the Green Line Institute. The Green Line Institute leads a multi-ethnic coalition stretching from San Diego, Sacramento, composed of multi-ethnic businesses, business organizations, community organizations, as well as churches. And we proudly and unequivocally support the historic appointments of both Commissioners Catherine Sandoval and Michael Florio. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members, John White with the Center for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Technologies. We strongly support the confirmation of Commissioner Sandoval and Commissioner Florio. As reflected in the discussion today, they bring different experiences to the table. I served with Mike some years ago on the ISO Board of Governors back in the difficult days of the electric crisis, and he's very knowledgeable. He's also, as you can see, very funny and good-natured. Even when in disagreement, he always listens. Commissioner Sandoval has brought a very valuable business perspective to the Commission, and actually I think the fact that both have articulated somewhat different responses on some difficult questions is actually a sign of strength. And a sign that the Commission is going to be well served by the breadth of their talents and the depth of their experience.
It is a sign of strength, but I still want to understand, the public wants to understand when a renewable project is too expensive or when it's not.
Senator, I'd be happy to discuss that. Let me just say that it comes down to the question of cost versus value, and is.
Well, my people call your people.
And they could do lunch. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jan Smutney-Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Energy Producers Association. We represent about 26,000 megawatts of generation here in California, a lot of that renewable. Commissioner Sandoval, I'm sorry, slow down, fine. I was just trying to hurry things along. Commissioner Sandoval obviously comes with a great resume, and we have been watching her and